On April 1st, 2026, the Super Mario Galaxy movie was released in theaters and had a successful opening weekend of $131 million domestically. It became the biggest opening weekend of 2026. Just 3 weeks later, Michael would hit theaters on April 24th, 2026, bringing in $97 million domestically. Michael became the biggest opening for a biopic, breaking the previous record held by 2015's Straight Outta Compton. Just 1 week later, on May 1st, 2026, The Devil Wears Prada 2 had its opening weekend, earning $77 million domestically. With 3 large openings, is 2026 on pace to be a record-setting box office year, the first in the post-pandemic era. So before we get started, I must stress that any opinions expressed are my own personal opinions. So instead of reviewing this weekend's box office results, which saw Devils Wear Prada 2 be the number 1 movie, I'm going to share my thoughts on how 2026 looks so far and what the rest of the year could look like and compare it to previous years. Comparing 2026 to previous years, so far this year, the box office has seen a total gross of just shy of $3 billion, with of course Super Mario Galaxy being the number 1 movie of the year so far. The box office has struggled to break the $10 billion mark. The last time it broke $10 billion was in 2019, with Avengers Endgame being the number 1 movie that year. The last time the box office did not break $10 billion prior to COVID was all the way back in 2008. The Dark Knight was the number 1 movie that year. 2008 was a time where we were climbing out of the Great Recession, plus cost to go to the movies was cheaper back in 2008 versus today. As of the recording of this video, quarter 1 of 2026 is already in the books, and we're about halfway through quarter 2, and there are still plenty of big titles yet to release. Just to name a few, they include Mandalorian Grogu, Scary Movie, Disclosure Day, Toy Story 5, Minions and Monsters, Moana, The Odyssey, Spider-Man Brand New Day, Avengers Doomsday, and Dune Part 3. So, will 2026 break $10 billion? In my opinion, it's going to be close, but I think 2026 will fall just short of the $10 billion mark. I think 2026 could close out with about 9.4 to 9.8 billion, which is still an amazing year. 2027 or 2028 could be the year the box office finally ends the drought and breaks the $10 billion mark. Speaking of quarter 1 of 2026, for those that are investors or have an interest in the stock market, we are still pretty much in earnings season. This is where companies who are listed on the stock exchange or are publicly traded release their financial results from the previous quarter. 2 of the largest theatrical chains in the United States, those being AMC Theaters and Cinemark, are publicly traded and recently held their earnings calls. Regal, who is the second largest theater chain in the United States, is not publicly traded. No surprise, both AMC and Cinemark reported attendance and revenue growth from quarter 1. Currently, Cinemark is trading at around $27 per share, pushing closer to $28. AMC, however, is trading around $1.60 per share. Of course, these prices will most likely not be accurate because stock prices change every minute of the day while the market is open. The good news for AMC is that it was upgraded to a buy rating with a new target of about $2.50 per share. This means that predictions are that AMC's stock price could at some point rise to as high as $2.50. For a company that's that large in the country, it is mind-blowing that their stock price is so low, but here is why. Although they had record attendance and revenue growth, that's only one half of the financial story. The other half is expenses and how much debt is the company carrying. Now, it shouldn't come as a surprise that a number of companies do have some amount of debt, but for the most part, the debt is manageable and is paid off at some point. AMC, on the other hand, has a debt that has ballooned to $4 billion. That's a big turnoff for investors and can make a company look less valuable, which is why AMC stock is currently under $2 as of the recording of this video. A good amount of that debt came from the fallout of the pandemic shutdown back in 2020 when theaters were closed. Cinemark, the third largest theater chain in the country, managed to pay back all of its pandemic-related debt. So clearly Cinemark is doing something right and AMC is doing something wrong. I may have briefly mentioned what I would do, but I will do a video where I will discuss what I would do to stop AMC's financial bleeding and get its debt paid down and back under control. And again, it will be my personal opinion. Paramount Skydance has been in the news a couple of times. First, the animated feature Avatar: Aang, The Last Airbender is something fans have been anticipating for its release on Paramount+. However, fans didn't have to wait until October as the movie was all of a sudden dropped on various websites and other platforms. Paramount Skydance confirmed that their server was hacked and an investigation was started. The investigation did lead authorities to the Philippines, where a 26-year-old man was arrested in connection to the hack. The authorities found evidence of the hack and the individual will face trial. According to reports, he is looking at about 7 years in prison if convicted. Piracy has been a concern in the industry for some time. This is the act of stealing a movie through illegally recordings or getting unauthorized access to a server to steal the content. This should be stressed. If you are caught pirating content, you could face a fine and or jail time. There are thousands and thousands of individuals who work on content, both in front of the camera and behind the camera, on major movies, independent movies, streaming shows, daily TV shows, etc. And stealing their work is disrespectful to them. I personally know people who make movies on the independent circuit, so I speak for them and everyone when I say do not illegally record their content unless you have written authorization and approval from the studio or owner. So as I mentioned, Paramount Skydance was in the news recently twice. So the other bit of news has more to do with Warner Bros. Discovery, as Warner Bros. Discovery shareholders approved of the proposal to merge with Paramount Skydance and Paramount's offer, bringing the merger one step closer. However, approval is still needed at the federal level when it comes to mergers and acquisitions. The Federal Trade Commission, or the FTC, and the United States Department of Justice Antitrust Division have to give approval. They either grant approval as is, give conditional approval pending both sides satisfy any requirements that will prevent red flags, or they can reject the proposed merger or acquisition. Some examples of mergers that were blocked or rejected or even led to the threat of a lawsuit include JetBlue and Spirit Airways back in 2024, Kroger and Albertsons in 2024, and AT&T and T-Mobile in 2011. As a result, these three proposed mergers ultimately were scrapped. Those that have followed me know that I'm against the Paramount Warner Bros. Discovery merger due to the concern of another major studio disappearing. This could lead to fewer movies in theaters and price increase on tickets. Paramount CEO stated that they will have 30 releases a year, which in my opinion is a bit of a stretch. There are 52 weeks in the calendar year. However, Paramount needs to take into account any movies that will perform extremely well. So they will need to give those movies at least 2 to 3 weeks or more to further drive that movie's gross, instead of releasing another movie too early, which could have a negative impact on the projected gross amounts for their two movies. For those excited about Brendan Fraser 2.0, and this includes that certain someone that I know, as well as the news that Mummy 4 is happening, will have even more reason to be excited. as Universal Pictures recently announced that Mummy 4 is changing its release date. Originally set for May 19th, 2028, Mummy 4 will now hit theaters on October 15th, 2027. Along with Brendan Fraser, Rachel Weisz will also make a return. So far, no details on a synopsis, but there could be a few interesting possibilities. First, I don't see Arnold Vosloo's Mummy character making an appearance, as with the story, it won't make sense having his character brought back to life once again. However, a new Mummy could have ties to Vosloo's character. As far as the timeline, I think they could just move forward by pretending the events of the third Mummy movie never happened. Maria Bello is a solid actress, however, I don't feel that on-screen connection between her and Brendan Fraser compared to Rachel and Brendan. Plus, the third movie had a few issues, which, no surprise, was not well received by critics and some fans. Ari Aster, who directed the 2019 movie Midsommar, will write and direct a new movie called Scapegoat for A24. There is reason to celebrate as well for Aster, as Scarlett Johansson has signed on to star in the movie. A24 has been distributing some solid titles such as the drama Undertone, Marty Supreme, and The Smashing Machine, just to name a few. They also have movies coming out soon, such as Backrooms and The Death of Robin Hood. Someone with star power such as Scarlett Johansson signing on to star in this movie with A24 means she must like the script and the story behind it, and that they have some exciting things planned over at A24. A24 is definitely taking advantage of the fact that there is one less major studio currently, that being Fox, being absorbed into Disney, along with the uncertainty of Warner Bros. Discovery. Don't be surprised to see some growth and more content being put out by A24. This is a movie distribution company to keep an eye on. Looking ahead, we have 3 new movies scheduled to open this week. First up is Mortal Kombat 2. A sequel to 2021's Mortal Kombat, the second movie is directed by Simon McQuoid and stars Carl Urban as Mortal Kombat fan favorite Johnny Cage. The movie follows the champions of Earthrealm, who must fight against each other to resist the rule of Shao Kahn, who is a major threat to Earthrealm and its defenders. This is based off of a video game, and given how the original 2 movies from the 90s did, I'm cautiously excited for this movie. Mortal Kombat 1 from the 90s received reviews that were mixed and leaning negative. Mortal Kombat 2 from the 90s received negative reviews. Mortal Kombat 2 from the 90s was so poorly received that plans for a Mortal Kombat 3 were ultimately scrapped. There have been some hidden gems when it comes to movies based on video games, but not many. And with the history of Mortal Kombat on the big screen, I'm on the cautious side. I am a fan of the video game franchise, so my excitement level is going to be dialed down just a bit as I go in with a clear mind to see how the movie turns out to be. Up next is Billie Eilish, Hit Me Hard and Soft. This is a 3D concert movie featuring Billie Eilish and is directed by James Cameron. The movie will feature performances from Billie Eilish's concert tour, Hit Me Hard and Soft. I am a bit curious about the 3D tech that James Cameron has been talking about for this movie. I personally don't know a lot of Billie Eilish songs, so I'm in no rush to see this movie, but I'll check it out when time allows. And finally, we have The Sheep Detectives. This is a mystery comedy movie starring Hugh Jackman and is directed by Cal Baldo. The movie follows a shepherd who reads murder mystery novels to his flock of sheep, and one day he is discovered dead. His flock of sheep must then try to solve the mystery. Sounds very, very strange, but it is geared towards kids and families, but I don't see this movie blowing the doors wide open. So with all that said, which movie is going to be number 1 at the box office this upcoming weekend? So here are my predictions, and this is based on domestic totals. Number 5 at the box office, I believe, will be Billie Eilish, Hit Me Hard and Soft. Finishing in 4th place, I believe that movie will be the Super Mario Galaxy movie. In third place, I'm going to go with Michael. Finishing in second place, I think it will be The Devil Wears Prada 2. Both Michael and Devil Wears Prada 2 will get bumped out of most or all premium large format or PLF screens this week, which will cut into their projected revenue. I think Michael will probably see a 45% drop from last week, while I believe Devil Wears Prada 2 will probably see a 55% drop versus last week. So the movie I'm predicting to be number one this weekend is Mortal Kombat 2. It's a familiar brand, there are fans of the video game franchise, and it's an action movie which should draw a crowd. Not big crowds like theaters have seen the last 2 weeks, but a respectable amount. So with that will conclude this episode of The Weekly Show. Thank you so much for joining me. I would like to hear from you. What are your thoughts on any of the movies you've seen that I've mentioned? Does your top 5 for the following week look similar to mine or different? Let me know in the comments down below. Coming soon as far as videos I'm working on is the third episode of Rewind, where I take a look at the movie Life. A ranking of the DCEU movies from worst to best. And as I mentioned earlier, a video on how I would fix AMC's financial woes if I was put in charge or put in a CEO position. And a bit of a nerdy video talking about the differences between IMAX and Dolby Cinema, so stay tuned for those. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you on the next one.